Growing up, I was a fair-weather Dragon Ball fan. The anime itself was airing a bit before my time. I was vaguely aware of it. My brother was a much bigger fan than myself, being older and watching it more regularly. I knew who Goku was and what a Super Saiyan was, but my main exposure to the series was the Budokai 2 game back on the PS2. So aside from doing my best to steer clear of the live-action movie, which I did eventually watch and never have again, I had a game and a few episodes of the anime that I'd seen. Then as I got into my late teens, I came across that old Budokai 2 disc in the attic while I was clearing out some things, and I decided to start watching Z. I was nearly an adult at this point and working a full-time job thanks to my apprenticeship, so I had money that could be used to buy the full series of Dragon Ball Z, and I was hooked. Z was awesome, I love it. Super, I found to be badass and funny, and I still need to watch the original show and GT, even though some people have told me not to bother with the GT series. Point being, by the time I finally got round to playing the first Xenoverse game, I was well enough versed in the world of Dragon Ball from Z onwards, which meant I could easily follow the time travel plot that wove in and out of the established canon. And I enjoyed it very much. According to my PlayStation, I have played the first Xenoverse game for 143 hours. Rookie numbers to some, but I think it's enough to say that I liked it. I never played its sequel though. I bought it years ago on sale, but I never actually got round to it. So when my autistic ass wanted a new 2-week obsession, I jumped back onto Xenoverse to prepare for this video. Can the sequel live up to my enjoyment of its predecessor, or will it succumb to the ravages of a spirit bomb? I'm TSM, and I finally played Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. Xenoverse 2 is exactly what a Dragon Ball fan wants in a game. It's wild, it's stylistic, and it isn't afraid to cater to what fans of the series love about it. The story takes place sometime after the events of Xenoverse 1. Toki Toki City has been expanded into a much larger hub area. You control another Create Your Own who has been selected by the Supreme Kai of Time for a special mission, but if you've played Xenoverse 1 then you kind of know what you're in for. You're tasked with proceeding through the events of Z in the first couple of arcs of Super to correct errors in time created by returning antagonist Toa and her android Mira. After being stopped in the first game, Toa has enlisted the assistance of reoccurring villains like Turles, Slug, Cooler, Broly, and a hidden Bardock. You have to enter each time period, assist the heroes of the era while partaking in some original fights that are happening parallel to the action of the series, all of which culminates in a final showdown against Toa, Mira, and a brainwashed original character from the Xenoverse. The story results in another team up with Goku to defeat a merged Toa and Mira to save an egg and stop the assault on the timeline. I'll be perfectly honest, I wasn't really paying attention to the story. Having just come off beating Xenoverse 1 to go into this game, going back through a load of the same events that I had just beaten the week before, it felt more like a chore than having fun with a game. Even when some new characters show up to spice up the experience, Xenoverse 2 is full of recycled areas from the first game. I'm not normally one to judge this. A lot of devs use recycled assets to assist in the development of a sequel, but when 90% of your combat areas are the same as before, or just the same area but reskinned with a bit of destruction, it kind of feels a bit lazy to me. If I had come straight into Xenoverse 2 instead of playing the first beforehand, I think I could have had a much more fun time with the story, but in my eyes, it's a glaring issue that I think will need to be addressed if a third game is ever made. So, personally, the story didn't hit much for me, but let's be honest. You're not here to play a Dragon Ball game for a story. If you're playing Xenoverse 2, chances are you're a fan and know the story well. You're here to create your own hero and deck them out with all of the abilities and styles of your favourite characters. And it's from here that Xenoverse 2 can really shine. The character creator is extensive and very open. There are a lot of different hairstyles, eye shapes, colours, skin tones to really create what you want. And that's before even getting to the clothing or your character's loadout. Xenoverse 2 is full of both iconic and original clothing styles that can be bought or unlocked by playing through missions. Each will affect your stats in different ways by altering your base point investment. Upon leveling up, you are granted a number of upgrade points to invest in certain stats, while the base stats go up regardless with each level. Your health, maximum ki and stamina, your base attack and ki blast damage, and the damage done by your special strike or blast abilities. Combining point investment and cosmetic choices allows for one of the better in-depth character creators I've ever come across. Combat is the same base version from Xenoverse 1, attacking and blocking buttons are the same, as are the loadout system for your abilities and in-battle items. The HUD has been updated though, with a more sleek design which I prefer over the blockier style of the first. It feels fresh, and I personally find it easier to read and action with. As I previously mentioned, the hub area has been greatly expanded on to allow a more free and fun way of exploring between missions. The overworld is full of original characters and returning iconic faces, and it feels busy, much more so than the hub in Xenoverse 1. Mentors make a return for you to learn specific abilities from and to max out friendships to unlock certain ultimate attacks. And one thing which I really appreciate is that once they're unlocked, You don't need to keep reloading the map and hoping they show up. Once they're there, they're there. It's a great improvement. The overworld is also scattered with certain biomes and locales taken from some of the most iconic places from the franchise, like Planet Namek or the Capsule Corporation. Pickups are also dotted over the hub world, as well as many different side missions and online activities that really give a much greater scale to what was provided in the first game. All these things brought together really creates a world that feels lived in and busy. It's one that I wish was larger so I could fly about and look around more. The soundtrack is exactly what you'd expect from over 20 years of Dragon Ball games, full of bombastic tracks to keep you hyped and locked in while facing down some of the franchise's best villains. There really isn't much to say about it. It suits perfectly for what the game is trying to achieve, and that's to make you feel like the ultimate badass. Now we delve into what I didn't like too much about the game. I've already gone over the majorly recycled assets, but the rest of it is kind of a bit nitpicky, I'll be brutally honest. First up, why do so many enemies now have a load of moves designed only to break your stamina bar? I'm fine with attacks draining the stamina bar while I'm blocking or trying to launch an ultimate attack, but there are a lot of attacks that enemies will use that are only to zoom in faster than anything and break all of my stamina regardless if I'm blocking or prepping an attack. This just feels like the devs needed to make enemies more difficult for the sake of making them difficult. Another combat related gripe is that the enemies are moving around a lot more than in Xenoverse 1. This makes hitting at range much harder and way less strategic than it was in the previous game. If you're charging up a blast or getting ready to fire an ultimate, chances are your opponent is just moving from side to side way too much, so when it comes to fire, you'll miss more often than not. This can really give the feeling of alienating players like me who want to participate in ranged combat as a preferred style. I don't want to have to respec and tool my character just to get up close. Like I mentioned before, the game allows you to use pretty much any move that's been featured in the series up to this point of the game's release, and I would much prefer to be using a Gallic gun rather than a Wolffang Fist. Another combat issue is the lock-on, and this follows on from an issue I have with the first game. When it's a single enemy, no problem. When you get to two, you need to be constantly switching if you want to dodge or evade something, as you can't do that while locked onto another thing, and can't at all in free camera. Then if you're fighting multiple opponents like 3+, you're stuffed. Switching between targets is not intuitive, and if you're fighting like 6 targets, you could be switching between the first 2 before it will decide to lock onto a third. I personally don't know how this could be improved. Maybe allow evasion to be possible if you're locked onto another target, and the same if you're in free camera. A highly trained warrior should be aware of all that's going on around them, and you can represent that by implementing these kind of changes. If Xeno 3 ever comes out, I want to see this kind of improvement because this needs to be addressed. Finally, I'd say my biggest gripe with the game is the amount of tutorials scattered all over the place. Not so much for the new activities that weren't in the first game, but even then, there are way too many of those. And this is an issue with sequels in general, not just for Xenoverse, especially with how we are able to import saved data from a previous title. We know how to play the game, give us an option to turn those kind of tutorials off. I know how to interact with your game, I know how to start missions, I know how the combat works. And actually, one last thing that just came to mind while editing this, let us skip the goddamn end credits. Don't get me wrong, I applaud these developers and congratulate you on your hard work, but bloody hell, man, do we have to sit through this every time? In the end, Xenoverse 2 is a weird one for me. The story is full of recycled material and the combat system is carried pretty much beat for beat over from the first game, but there is a lot of what Dragon Ball fans love here, and with all the missions, the mentors, the styles, abilities, ranking systems, even more so if you're willing to purchase DLC, there is a lot here that is entertaining and will keep you busy. I respect the fact that this game has been receiving DLC and support from the devs for nearly 10 years now, but maybe it's time to expand on that. Either by a free pack that expands the world and missions, or by a new game that expands everything with a new story that can grip an audience, and fun as hell gameplay that can make them stay. If Xenoverse 3 is ever coming out, I will look forward to it, but for now with Xenoverse 2, it's something that might be time to let rest and move on to other projects. I am a sucker for a good anime tie-in game. I've already said I enjoy the Dragon Ball games. The AOT games are also very fun and I don't think they get nearly enough love, and if they make the needed changes and improvements, a theoretical third game would be fun as hell. Oh wow, look at that.